The Wright brothers undertook their first flight in 1903. Then we move on to 1926. Western Air Express inaugurates the first scheduled airline passenger service in the United States. Now, let's talk about this in relationship to space. The first successful spaceship was the Sputnik in 1957. And then a few years later, in 1961, we have the Vostok 1 becoming the first manned spacecraft. So then in 1969, we have the moon landing. So from 1969 until today, what's happening? Why are there no civilian flights into space? If we can go from 1903, the first flight, to 1926, commercial flights that now run 24 hours a day, 7 days a week to all points across the globe, why hasn't that happened? Going into space just for the fun of it. I have absolutely no doubt in my mind that there are people in this world who have enough money and enough time that they would pay any amount of money for a ticket to ride into space for no reason at all, just to say that they've been. And NASA isn't letting up the reins for anybody else to go. That this strikes me as a little unusual. So when I started having this thought process and I was thinking about civilian space program, it occurred to me that in 1986, the Challenger space shuttle was taking up Christa McAuliffe, this teacher from Concord, New Hampshire. I think that everybody thought that this program was going to be opened to more civilians, but that didn't happen. As we all know, the Challenger exploded. As I was processing that, YouTube, in its infinite wisdom or infinite mind tap in my brain, suggested this video to me of the persuasion that the space shuttle Challenger had actually not lost its crew and that several members were alive and well. So naturally, I found this very intriguing. I had some questions. This video is the result of my research. I left my computer screen recorder running so that you could see. Nothing has been falsified, nothing has been inserted. This is a live feed, which I've edited down for time, but this is exactly as I discovered. First, I'm searching Ronald McNair. I'm just going to go right to his Wikipedia images, and this is another close-up to show a tighter image on his teeth. And then I've searched Carl McNair. Carl McNair is the brother of Ronald McNair. And as you can see, Carl McNair engages in many speaking opportunities where he often talks about his brother. Now, the video that I watched indicates that Carl McNair is actually Ronald McNair. But I have a couple of problems with the assessment that they are the same person. Number one, obviously, would be the large gap in the teeth. Carl McNair has a significant gap in between his two front teeth, and while it is possible for teeth to shift later in life, perhaps if he'd lost some back teeth, he might have a spreading occur between the two front teeth. That's possible. It's not very probable, though, and I don't think that it's the case in this particular situation. Not only that, but there's a little bit of a difference if you look in the corner of the mouth. When Ronald McNair smiles, you can see even underneath his mustache, the edge of his bottom lip goes up in a very angular way, and on Carl McNair, although he has a mustache as well, you can see that it goes up and then it sort of loops down. That's fairly distinctive. It separates him from his brother. They are very similar. They do look alike. They look like brothers, obviously. And some research that I found, you can see from this posting that whoever posted this claims to have known these people in real life and to know that they were in fact brothers. So for me, that would be a pass. Next up, we have Ellison Onizuka, and here we have his Wikipedia page, and I've just scrolled through that quickly. In case you want to read that, you can just go ahead and pause at any time to read any of that. And this is a close-up of his NASA portrait. Claude Onizuka, you come up with Ellison's brother. So he's been at various events. You can see Ellison's name in the background there. Again, this is a close-up image of present day. The faces of Ellison and Claude sort of split and put together. And it's true, they do have a lot of similarity. The chin is the same, the ear, the brow, the eyebrows, the nose looks identical. It just looks like it's spread a little bit with age. The proportions of the face are the same, accounting for age and added weight. It's very compelling. And frankly, what's really incredible for me is that the crow's feet around the eyes take almost exactly the same track across the face, which is kind of amazing to me. Very close match. So next up we have Christa McAuliffe. And this is her Wikipedia. Again, if you want to read any of this, feel free to pause the video. This is the close-up of Christa with her official NASA portrait, and we're going to search Sharon A. McAuliffe. The first search result that came up was Christa McAuliffe Wikipedia page. You can see that it's purpled because I already clicked on it. But instead of having her NASA portrait, as it should, Sharon McAuliffe's search results bring up Christa McAuliffe's Wikipedia page, but with a thumbnail of Sharon McAuliffe's portrait. You can see that she is here in her portrait on the page for the Syracuse University College of Law. When we bring these portraits side by side, there are striking similarities. The color of the hair, the size of the face is very similar. The chin and the cheek line, they look compellingly similar. However, there are some issues. Although the eyebrows look to be about the same height and distance from the eyes, and the eye shape could be similar, if you look closely, you will see that Christa McAuliffe has dark brown eyes, and Sharon McAuliffe has light blue eyes. Now, of course, this could be achieved with contact lenses, but I've zoomed in pretty tight, and I have not seen any evidence of contact lenses on this individual, so I'm not thinking that's the case. Now, the other thing is, as one ages, the lips do get a bit thinner. They're a little bit thinner, but they also appear to be shaped differently. The smile takes a slightly different shape as the lips stretch across the teeth. The teeth are actually quite different as well. Maybe caps. Certainly that would account for a different style of teeth. These are very different. It's strange that they have the same name. It's a coincidence, but I don't think this is the same person. Now that I have hopefully sufficiently debunked 3 of these individuals, I'm going to move on to Dick Scobie, Francis Richard Scobie. This is his NASA portrait. There is a result from a LinkedIn page of a gentleman named Richard Scobie. But Dick Scobie and Richard Scobie is a bit more complicated. When I bring these two side by side, they look very similar. The curve of the nostril looks the same. Dick Scobie has these sort of wide-set eyes, and you can see when he looks straight at the camera, one of his irises is slightly asymmetrical in comparison to the other. Their lines across the forehead appear to be in the same position. The brow ridge looks almost identical. The eyebrows are at the same height above the eyes. The bridge of the nose looks slightly different. In some parts of the image it looks the same, and in some parts it looks slightly different, but that could also be because this is a different camera with different lighting. It tends to make facial structure vary a little bit when you take photos at a slightly different angle and when you have different lenses and different lighting on the subject. This is a very close match. Again, his head is not in exactly the same position, but the laugh lines on the side of his face are very similar. The nose appears to be about the same size. The ears appear to be about the same size. The crow's feet look the same. It's striking. So what I've done is I've gone into my Photoshop program and I've taken a picture of Dick Scobie, and I've gone ahead and overlaid a picture of Richard Scobie and lightened up the opacity so you can see both images as they line up. And as you can see, as I go through and I change the size to try to make the sizes approximate to one another. Again, remember that this is a slightly different position One is taken at a slightly lower angle and one at a slightly higher angle. So they're not going to be exact anyway. And also remembering that noses and ears tend to shift a little bit. They get a little bit wider, they can get a little bit longer, they can get a little bit thicker with age. But even taking into account those differences, there's similarity in the shape and angle of the eyelid, even in the eyelid droop. The mouth and nose and eyes line up in the same position. The mouth is approximately the same size. The laugh lines align with each other. This is crazy. And also, the teeth are the same. It's hard to tell because one of these photos is a bit grainy, but it appears to me that the teeth are approximately the same size. Teeth are very different from individual to individual. We have all sorts of shapes and sizes and lengths, and these look like they could be about the same. So I apologize to Mr. Richard Scobie if he is just an ordinary citizen and perhaps being bombarded by crazy conspiracy theorists who think that he's Dick Scobie, but he must forgive us because he looks exactly like Dick Scobie. Okay, next we have Michael J. Smith. And this is the Wikipedia page with his NASA profile. And when one searches Michael J. Smith again, you'll actually find an image for an individual named Michael Smith, who is a professor at the College of Engineering in the University of Wisconsin. And again, at first glance, you think he has a little bit of a similar face structure. They have the same color eyes. The eyebrows look very similar. The laugh lines look very similar. The shape of the mouth is quite similar. It's fairly compelling. If you go back to the results, you'll find another portrait of the same individual. And when I pull up that portrait and bring them in, it's even more compelling. The eyes look the same shape. The eyelashes look to be in the same position and length. The eyebrows are in approximately the same spot. The brow ridge is similar. The nose, it looks slightly larger on the older gentleman, the older Michael Smith. That's not uncommon with age. Sweeping off the nose toward the cheek right under the eye, the light seems to hit in the same way, which to me would suggest that there's a similar bone structure there. The mouth is really incredible to me. On the older gentleman, you'll see that the middle of the lip dips down a little bit, covering the top of the teeth. And I think that's just a variation in how wide we smile. Sometimes our lip gets stuck on our teeth, and sometimes it slides up above our teeth, depending on the position of our teeth and our lips. And I think that's really the only variance here. If you look at the shape of the mouth and the lower lip, they're very similar. The lips sweep up into the same sort of angular corners. The mouth looks to be about the same size. It looks to be about the same size in relation to the eyes. If you draw an imaginary line from the corner of the mouth up into the middle of the eye, the iris and the pupil, this looks identical. If you notice, the last gentleman that we looked at had sort of square, short teeth, and this gentleman has longer, more narrow teeth. These kind of teeth show up on both of these men. I actually flipped the image because both of these pictures are taken from different sides of the face. So I flipped it to see if there was better similarity on the other side of the face, and it's still fairly compelling. One of his front teeth looks to me like it's slightly overlapping the other in the NASA portrait. I don't know if that's a trick of the lens, but that's what it appears to me. And in the older Michael Smith, I don't see that same overlap, but it's possible that might have shifted. As our bones grow older, the teeth sometimes become a little bit looser, and that can cause a gradual shifting over time. So I've done the same process. I've taken this image into Photoshop and resized them to approximate to each other. and reduce the opacity so that we can see both of them. And keeping in mind that these images are taken from different sides of the face, they're actually opposite each other. It's shocking. It's shocking, the similarity. And again, I've gone ahead and flipped the photo so that we can have the same side of the face and check on how well they match up, and it's pretty astounding. One thing I noticed that looks quite different is the ear. There's a couple of different explanations that might account for that. Number one, the astronaut might have had something fixed behind the ear. Also, there is such a thing as pinback surgery they could certainly have. And lastly, we have Judith Resnik. This is her Wikipedia. There's a close-up on her NASA portrait. And then searching Judith Resnik, Yale law professor, brings up a profile of another Judith Resnik, who is a professor at Yale Law. She's also found in numerous places online where she's been a visiting professor. This is a side-by-side comparison that I found online. And these are some side-by-side comparisons that I put together, pulling my own images from search results. On the left is Judith Resnik, the astronaut, and on the right is Judith Resnik, the professor. And you can see that their coloring is the same and their body structure is about the same size. And those hand gestures are, of course, very similar while she's talking. Also the mouth, if you look at the lips and the cheekbones on the side of the face. It's striking. And again, I've gone into Photoshop, overlaid, decreased opacity, changed the sizing to make the images the same size. And once they're overlaid, and tilted to be at the right angle, it's pretty incredible. If it's possible that any of these astronauts might have survived, is it possible they were posing for some other reason? When Christa McAuliffe went into space, it was a national event. Scores upon scores of school children were positioned in front of the TV to watch the first teacher in space. And scores upon scores of school children watched that teacher blow up in front of their eyes. If that doesn't traumatize an entire nation and make them fear the possibility of traveling into space, I don't know what would. Is it possible that event was staged as a reason to make a nation fear going into space, as a deterrent to turn us away from the sky, to turn us away from the possibility of space? I don't know. Maybe all possibilities are on the table. Who knows? So there you have it, folks. I was able to debunk several of them, which I do not feel are a correct match, but half of them are a very, very close match. Either these people are alive and well, or they've got some doppelgangers wandering the earth. It's pretty amazing. Let me know what you think. I would love to hear from you and hear what you think in the comments. What do you see similar? What do you see different? Tell me your thoughts.